your life to start so quietly. I remember exactly where I was when it happened. In the break room, sitting on a plastic chair that wobbled every time I shifted my weight. I was halfway through a vending machine sandwich and debating whether the coffee was worth a second attempt. Another Friday night at the hospital. Another 12-hour shift. I'd been on call since noon and had just finished stitching up a construction worker who'd slipped on rebar. Nothing major. I was already thinking about heading home, maybe catching Haley before she went to bed. She'd said she was going to dinner for a friend's birthday, and I figured I might still make it for a late-night recap. A little joke about overpriced tapas and Instagram cocktails. Funny how fast everything changes. The trauma alert came in at 8:47 p.m. 3 inbound. The charge nurse announced as she stepped into the room. Car crash. Highway 12. Rollover. All unconscious. ETA 5. I stood instinctively, grabbing my badge and heading for the trauma bay. I didn't think much of it. Highway 12 was notorious, narrow, winding, not enough lighting. We got calls from that stretch of road all the time. When the EMTs burst through the doors, I didn't look at the patients right away. My focus was on protocols, vitals, triage, rotation. But something felt off. Maybe it was the way the paramedics looked at me. Not panicked, but uneasy. "Dr. Mitchell?" one of them asked. "Yeah," I said. "I think you should see this." He handed me a clipboard with the intake forms. I glanced at the top name. Patient A, Tyler Mitchell. Age 15. Male. My heart stopped. I blinked, thinking it was a mistake. Someone with the same last name, maybe. Coincidence. But then I saw Patient B. Patient B, Haley Mitchell. Age 42. Female. And Patient C, Jake Mitchell. Age 39. Male. I didn't feel the floor vanish beneath me, but it might as well have. I stood frozen, surrounded by the buzz of rushing nurses, equipment clattering, heart monitors beeping. But all I could hear was my own pulse pounding in my ears. My son, my wife, my brother, in the same vehicle, in the same accident. No one had warned me, no one had called, and suddenly, everything about the day came crashing into focus. Haley had kissed me goodbye this morning, said she was carpooling to dinner with a friend. I didn't ask who. Jake had mentioned something vague a few days ago about getting out of town for a while, taking a break. I hadn't thought anything of it. They weren't supposed to be together. So why were they in the same car, on a remote highway an hour from the restaurant Haley had claimed to be going to? "Ryan!" someone barked. "Dr. Morales, you're too close to this. You need to step back." "I'm not." I started to argue. She raised a hand, her expression firm. "No, you're not going in there. I'm taking point. Go sit down. Now." I took one step toward trauma room 2, where I could hear the whir of the defibrillator, before someone physically stopped me. An orderly. I think his name was Nate. He didn't say anything, just gently turned me around and guided me toward the nurse's station. That's when I saw the plastic evidence container. It was sitting on the counter, unceremoniously placed there by one of the EMTs. Inside were the contents pulled from the crash, likely recovered during the field triage. A cracked phone, a key fob, 2 wallets, and one small hotel keycard. It was clipped to the zipper of a beige handbag. Haley's handbag, the same one she used for work, worn leather, gold trim. I'd bought it for her last Christmas. The keycard stood out, stark white with a blue stripe. One of those generic cards you slide into a reader. A logo I didn't recognize, maybe a roadside chain, the kind you find on forgotten highways. I stared at it for a full 30 seconds, my mouth dry. "She said she was going to dinner," I murmured, mostly to myself. "Downtown, with friends." "Looks like they were headed the opposite direction," Morales said gently. She'd returned, her face tense but not unkind. The car was registered to Jake. They swerved off the road near mile marker 42. Motel's about a mile from there. Motel? Yeah. I shook my head. There's no reason she'd be out there. None. Morales hesitated, then reached into her coat pocket. This was in her phone case. She handed me a folded piece of paper. A receipt. 1 night stay. Room 108. Check-in time, 7:36 p.m. I glanced at the clock on the wall. It was now 8:59 p.m. Barely an hour later, they were being wheeled into my hospital on stretchers. What the hell happened between check-in and the crash? My brain couldn't stop spinning. What was Tyler doing there? Why wasn't he home? He hated car rides with Jake. Haley wouldn't lie to me. Not about something like this. Would she? A thought crept into my head then. One I immediately wanted to unthink. I remembered something Haley said last week. I might need to drive some people home after the dinner. You know how it gets. At the time, I nodded, thinking it was responsible of her. But now, she claimed she was giving people a ride. I said out loud, piecing it together like a detective in my own life. She even made a big deal about being the designated driver. She wasn't driving, Morales said, scanning the accident report. Blood work shows she was well over the limit. Jake was behind the wheel. I blinked. What about Tyler? In the back seat. Seatbelt on. Minor head trauma. He's being monitored. We're waiting on his CT. I rubbed my jaw, trying to keep my hands from shaking. I need to see him. You can't. Not yet. I'm his father. And I get that, Morales said, her voice firm but not cruel. But you're also a staff physician here. You're emotionally compromised. And if there's even a whiff of a boundary issue, we both get sued. You know the rules. I turned away, pressing both palms to the counter. I needed something solid, something real. But all I could see in my mind was that keycard. That cheap plastic rectangle. That motel logo. There was no way it got in her purse by accident. No way Jake just happened to be there too. And Tyler. God, my son. What did he see? What did he know? For the first time in my life, I felt something break inside me. A quiet hairline fracture in the center of everything I thought I understood. This wasn't a coincidence. It was a pattern. And the truth? I was starting to see it. I didn't sleep that night. After the crash, after the hospital chaos settled into a dull hum, I sat in the staff lounge long after my shift ended, staring at a cup of coffee I never touched. I couldn't bring myself to go home. Not to that quiet house full of framed lies and shared routines that suddenly felt like props in someone else's life. I kept replaying the scene in my mind. The keycard, the motel receipt, their names on the trauma sheet. I'd seen plenty of wrecks, real, violent ones, but this was something different. This one didn't just smash steel and bend spines. Cracked open the floor beneath my life. It didn't take long for the past few months to come rushing back. Every little moment I'd brushed off. Every weird interaction I'd filed under nothing suddenly screamed louder than the sirens that brought them in. There were signs. Of course there were signs. It started subtly. Haley would be home late from school board meetings. Meetings I never questioned because I trusted her. We both had demanding jobs. She was a school psychologist. Schedules were fluid. Meetings ran over. Parents showed up late. It made sense until it didn't. Then there was the perfume. One day she came home smelling like something unfamiliar. Floral. Sharp. Not her usual soft vanilla scent. I asked if she'd switched brands and she laughed. Said one of the teachers at school had sprayed her by accident in the lounge. I believed her. Why wouldn't I? Because I was an idiot. That's why. And then there was the distance. Not obvious, not cold, just different. She started leaving the room when she took phone calls. She turned her screen away when she texted. She locked her phone with a passcode for the first time in years. When I teased her about it, she said it was because students at school had figured out how to snoop. It all sounded reasonable, logical, but it never felt right. Still, I didn't press. I told myself not to be one of those husbands, the paranoid ones who spiral into insecurity and cling to coincidences. I gave her space because that's what a good partner does. I gave her trust because I thought we had that kind of marriage. One night, about 2 months before the crash, she came home with a paper receipt tucked into her coat pocket. It slipped out when she hung it by the door. I picked it up without thinking. Some fancy bistro uptown, 2 entrees, drinks, a shared dessert. Nothing wild, but it caught my attention. Double lunching on me? I joked when I showed it to her. She blinked once, then gave a half laugh. Oh, that was from last week. I took a coworker out to lunch. You remember Jake said he got that client referral? We met to talk strategy. Jake, my brother. At the time, I didn't register how quickly she offered up his name. It was too quick, too casual. But she kept her tone light and handed me her keys to hang up like nothing had happened. I told myself I was overreacting. I reminded myself that Jake and I had been distant for years. He was the free spirit, the charming screw-up who could never stay in one place long. But even so, Haley had always been civil around him, polite but not close. That changed. Around Thanksgiving, I noticed a weird shift. Haley and Jake, whenever they were in the same room, acted like coworkers in an HR meeting. Overly formal when I was nearby, stiff smiles, safe topics. But once or twice, I caught glances exchanged across the table when they didn't know I was watching. Not romantic exactly, just tense, like something unspoken was hanging in the air. I remember one night specifically. We were hosting a small dinner, just a few friends and family. Tyler was helping me set the table, and I heard Haley laugh in the other room. Not a normal laugh. Not the polite, filtered kind she used at work or with relatives. This was a real laugh. Unfiltered. Comfortable. And Jake was the one making her laugh. I froze in the middle of unwrapping silverware. It wasn't what she said. I couldn't even hear the words. It was how she said them. Easy. Warm. Like someone in love. And it wasn't with me. After that, things started clicking in ways I didn't want them to. The text messages she hid. The sudden urgency to run errands late at night. The way she dressed up more on weekdays than weekends. The shift in how she treated me. Not cruel but distant, like someone always halfway somewhere else. Still, I fought the instinct. Every time I suspected something, I shut it down. I buried the feeling and chose the version of reality that didn't make my chest hurt. Because if I believed what I feared, then I had to believe she was capable of that kind of betrayal. That Jake was capable of it too. And I wasn't ready to believe either. Until now. Now I had a keycard, a receipt, and 3 bodies pulled from a wreck outside a cheap motel. And a knot in my gut that told me this had been building for months. Maybe longer. Around 3 a.m. I finally left the hospital. I drove home in silence. No radio. No GPS. Just me and the dark. Winding road I'd driven 1,000 times without ever noticing how hollow it had become. When I walked through the front door, everything looked exactly the same. Shoes by the bench, a jacket on the hook, Tyler's school project half finished on the table. It all looked normal, but nothing about it was. I walked into our bedroom. The bed was still made from that morning. Her side smelled like lavender and something else, faintly metallic, almost sterile. Maybe I imagined it. I opened her nightstand drawer. Inside were the usual things. A few receipts, a box of allergy meds, a folded-up letter from a parent thanking her for helping their daughter. Nothing out of place. But in the back corner was something I hadn't seen before. A second phone charger. One that didn't match her work phone. I knew her devices. We'd synced our calendars. This one was new. I didn't have proof, not yet, but my gut was already ahead of my logic. Something had been happening under my nose, and I had let it. It wasn't just about Haley and Jake anymore. It was about Tyler. Why was he there? What had he seen? Why hadn't she told me where they were going? And worse, was he being used as a cover? That question burned the deepest. I sat on the edge of the bed, feeling the weight of every moment I'd missed, every flag I'd ignored. I thought about the time Haley told me she was too tired for dinner, but Jake had randomly called me from a bar later that same night. She was in the background. I recognized her voice, but Jake talked over it. He'd said it was the TV. I believed him. Or the night Tyler came home early from a weekend trip with Jake and seemed off, quiet, not angry, just distant. He'd asked if we could switch rooms. Said he didn't like the energy in his bedroom anymore. I told him we'd talk about it later. We never did. Now, I wasn't just dealing with suspicion. I was staring at the possibility that my brother and my wife had been pulling my son into the middle of something toxic, something unforgivable. The signs weren't just there. They were screaming, and I was finally listening. The next morning started with a knock on my office door. I hadn't even had time to change out of yesterday's scrubs. I was still at the hospital, pretending to work but getting nothing done. Just rereading Tyler's vitals on the monitor and pacing the hall outside his room like a ghost that wouldn't leave. Ryan. It was Officer Malden, the hospital liaison. Quiet guy. Always professional. He was holding a plastic evidence bag. We need to log the contents of the purse from the scene. I gave a tired nod, stepping aside so he could set it on my desk. He unzipped the pouch slowly. Everything's documented and photographed. Just need your initials here for chain of custody. I was only half listening until he pulled out Haley's phone. It was still intact, a little cracked, but operational. I recognized the blue pop socket, the small scratch on the top corner. I'd bought her that phone last Christmas when she mentioned hers was freezing up. I can take this to the station, Malden said, but I raised a hand. Wait. He paused. She didn't have a password on it, did she? He shook his head. Nope, just swiped open when we logged it. We'll pull the data formally, but... Your family, want a minute before we seal it? It was a gray area, legally and ethically, but I was already picking the phone up before he'd finished the question. I sat at my desk, alone now, staring at the screen. Her home screen was a picture of Tyler at age 11, holding a fishing pole, face smudged with dirt, smiling wide. That image gutted me more than anything. The kind of smile that came from innocence, trust. I opened the Photos app. I didn't know what I was looking for. Maybe a hint, maybe a reason. Maybe I just wanted to be wrong. I scrolled. Family vacation photos. Holiday gatherings. *TS of recipes and articles. Nothing unusual until I saw a photo taken the previous evening. It was timestamped 7:42 p.m. 25 minutes before the crash. My hand froze. It was a mirror selfie, the kind she used to take when she'd get ready for a girls' night out. Except this one wasn't taken in our house. It was in a motel bathroom. I recognized the tile immediately, that faded peach-pink linoleum every roadside motel seems to use. The mirror was cracked slightly in the corner. Haley stood in front of it wearing a thin white robe, tied loosely. Her hair was slightly damp, her makeup fresh, cheeks flushed. She was smiling, but she wasn't alone. Behind her, with one arm wrapped around her waist and his face buried against her neck, was Jake, my brother. He was shirtless, smirking. His eyes weren't on the camera. They were on her. In the background, barely noticeable unless you knew what you were looking at, sat Tyler's backpack, propped up on a chair near the door. Bright blue with the initials TM, stitched on the side in white thread. I stared at it for a long time. That stupid backpack. He'd begged for it. Custom embroidered. Said it made him feel like a pro gamer. I'd watched him pack it every morning before school, throw it in the car, toss it in the hallway when he got home. And now, here it was, sitting in a motel room, a silent witness to whatever the hell had happened. I felt the air leave my lungs. I set the phone down slowly and stood up, bracing both hands against the wall. My stomach twisted so hard I thought I was going to be sick. It wasn't just a suspicion anymore. Not an ugly hunch, not a gut feeling I could rationalize. This was proof. It wasn't emotional. It wasn't innocent. It wasn't vague. This was physical. My wife had been sleeping with my brother, and doing it while our son waited in the car just outside. How long had Tyler been sitting there? Did he knock? Did he see them? Was he ignored? Every possible scenario hit me like a punch to the chest. I didn't want to know the answers, but I knew I would have to ask. Later that afternoon, Tyler woke up. He was groggy, disoriented, still on light sedatives, but coherent. The attending pediatric trauma specialist signed off on a short visit, and I walked in with my badge clipped to my shirt. Not as his father officially, but as a doctor with permission to check in. His voice was raspy when he saw me. Dad. I sat down slowly beside him. Hey, buddy. Is Mom okay? She's stable. So is Uncle Jake. But you're the one I was worried about. He didn't say anything at first. Just nodded slowly, wincing as he adjusted the blanket. There was a long silence. I didn't want to rush it. Then he said something that made my heart stop. I didn't mean to see anything. I looked up. He stared at the ceiling. I didn't want to, I swear. I just got scared. She left me in the car for so long. I thought something happened. Ty, what did you see? His face turned red. Tears welled in his eyes. They were in the room, laughing, drinking. I saw them through the window. She said they were just talking. But he shook his head, covering his face with his hands. I saw them, he whispered, on the bed. It was weird. I didn't know what to do. I moved closer, resting my hand gently on his arm. You did nothing wrong. I thought maybe I misunderstood. But then they saw me, and everything got worse. What happened after that? They both came outside. She was mad. Not at him, but at me. Said I should have stayed in the car. That it was a private conversation. My chest tightened. She tried to make it like a family thing, he said. Said we all needed to talk. That it was complicated. Jake looked like he didn't want to talk. But he drove anyway. She was still drinking. I was in the back. I asked them to stop fighting. I asked them to stop driving. He took a shaky breath. Then the lights came. Bright. Someone swerved. Jake yelled. And everything just crashed. I nodded slowly. Tried to breathe evenly. Thank you for telling me, I said, keeping my voice calm. I know that wasn't easy. Are they going to jail? He asked quietly. I didn't answer right away. I didn't know. I wanted to say yes. I wanted to say something that made sense of the madness. But all I could say was, you're safe now. That's all that matters. Tyler closed his eyes. I sat there with him until his breathing evened out. Then I stood, walked out of the room, and went straight to my office. I took Haley's phone. I took the photo. I opened the chat history, and what I found there made everything crystal clear. There were dozens of messages, some from as far back as March. Flirty at first, jokes, compliments, late-night conversations under fake names. Then it escalated. Explicit, desperate, plans to meet, comments about Tyler, about me, about starting over. I **Ted everything. Saved it all. The picture, the messages, the GPS ping, the timestamp, and when I was done, I opened a blank folder on my computer. I labeled it simply, for the attorney, because I knew exactly what I was going to do next. The worst thing about betrayal is that it doesn't come from your enemies. It comes from the people you'd never think to guard yourself against. And now that included my own brother, my own wife, and somehow, even worse, they'd pulled my son into the crossfire. I didn't know how to navigate it. There's no manual for this kind of thing. No guidebook for how to talk to your teenager after he witnesses his mother cheat with your brother. It's not the kind of fatherhood milestone anyone prepares for. The next day, after Tyler had stabilized enough for full conversation and his CT came back clear, the hospital psychologist gave the green light for me to speak with him. Not just as his dad, but as someone who needed the truth. Gently, patiently, carefully, we sat in the private pediatric recovery room, low light, warm blankets, soft beeping machines. He looked so small in that bed. Not just because of the 4 drip or the bruises, but because of what had been taken from him. There's an innocence that kids are supposed to keep until life gives them no choice but to let it go. That moment came too early for my son. I want you to take your time, I told him. You don't have to say anything if it feels too hard. He nodded, staring at his hands. Was it an accident? He asked me quietly. I paused. The crash. He shook his head. No, everything before it. I swallowed hard. I don't think it was an accident. He nodded again like he already knew. Then he started to talk. And what he said changed everything. It started after Mom picked me up from school, he said. She said we were going to help Uncle Jake with something. His car was stuck, or dead, or something. She made it sound like no big deal. Did she say where you were going? No. She just said it was outside town. I thought it was going to be like a gas station or something. I didn't ask questions. He looked ashamed, like he was blaming himself for going along with it. It was about an hour before we got there, he continued. We stopped at a convenience store, and she bought a bottle of wine. I asked if she was going to dinner after, and she said something like that. I didn't get it. I still don't. I felt my throat tighten, but I said nothing. I just listened. When we got to the motel, I thought we were dropping something off. She told me to wait in the car. I was on my phone, so I didn't really care at first. He shifted uncomfortably under the blanket. But 20 minutes went by, then 30. I texted her. She didn't answer. I called and it rang once, then went to voicemail. That's when I started to get nervous. What did you do? I got out and went to the front office, he said. I asked if a woman with long brown hair and a red coat checked in. The guy behind the counter said she was in room 108. He pointed toward the far end. I stared at him, stunned. He just told you that? Yeah. I think he thought I was her kid. Or maybe he didn't care. He glanced down. I walked over. The door was closed, but the blinds were bent, and I could see through them. I already knew what he saw, but hearing it from him felt like ripping my chest open again. They were on the bed, he said, voice cracking. Jake didn't have a shirt. She was laughing. They were drinking from the wine bottle. He stopped and looked away. It wasn't just talking. My hands clenched in my lap, nails digging into my palms. I didn't know what to do, he whispered. I felt sick. I backed away and walked back to the car. I sat there with my head down, waiting. I didn't cry. I just waited. How long? Maybe 10 minutes? Then she came out looking panicked. Jake came too. They were arguing. When I got in the car, she asked me what I saw. What did you say? I told her I saw enough. That sentence hit like a sledgehammer. She tried to explain, said they were talking about family stuff, that I misunderstood, that it was complicated. He looked at me then, and his eyes, usually so warm, so trusting, were empty. She lied right to my face, Dad. I felt something inside me snap. Then what? She said we were going to talk, as a family, that we were all going for a drive and we'd figure it out. I told her I didn't want to, that we should go home. But she got in the passenger seat and Jake drove. Was she still drinking? She brought the bottle in the car. She passed it back and forth with Jake. Not the whole time, but enough. I kept asking them to pull over. Jake told me to relax. Tyler's hands were trembling now. Then I started crying. I told them I didn't feel safe, that they were being stupid. Jake told me he had it under control. Mom said we needed to talk it through. But they didn't talk to me. They just talked to each other. About how I didn't understand. About how you were going to be difficult. That word made my skin crawl. What happened right before the crash? I remember the headlights. A car in the other lane swerved. Jake tried to turn, but we hit the guardrail. Then everything flipped. I don't remember anything after that. He paused. I thought I was going to die. My voice broke as I said, I'm so sorry, buddy. I didn't know what to do. He said again, softer this time. You did everything right, I told him. None of this is your fault. Not 1 second of it. You were brave. You stayed calm. You told the truth. I don't want to see her, he whispered. That stopped me. I don't want to see her again. Not for a long time. You don't have to, I said. That's not your responsibility. She made her choices, and now I'll make sure you're protected from the fallout. He looked at me for a long time, then nodded slowly, like he believed me. I stayed with him another hour. We didn't talk much after that. He played a game on his phone. I sat in silence, watching him, feeling the weight of everything he'd been forced to carry. Later, when I left the room, I knew what I had to do next. It wasn't just about the affair anymore. It wasn't just about betrayal. It was about recklessness, about endangerment, about dragging a child, my child, into a toxic mess built on lies and booze and deceit. I took out my phone. I reopened the folder I'd started. For the attorney. Now I renamed it for Tyler, because from this point forward, every decision I made, every paper I filed, every call I took, every truth I exposed would be for him. He deserved peace. He deserved stability. And he damn sure deserved better than the chaos they'd handed him in a motel parking lot. By the time the weekend rolled around, I was no longer angry. I was resolved. I'd spent 2 full days watching over Tyler at the hospital, fielding soft glances from coworkers who didn't know what to say and avoiding Haley's name like it might burn a hole through the walls if spoken aloud. But inside, I was building something. Quietly, carefully. While Haley slept in an inpatient room down the hall and Jake remained sedated in ICU, I got to work. My first stop, the hospital's legal compliance office. I wasn't reporting her as her husband. I was reporting her as a mandated reporter. As a licensed physician, I had a responsibility to file concerns regarding her conduct with minors, especially with her role in mental health services for children. So I submitted the official notice, noting her intoxication, the crash, Tyler's testimony, the motel receipt, and the evidence she knowingly placed a minor in a high-risk situation while under the influence of alcohol. Her position as a school psychologist made it worse. She held a duty of care. She breached it, and now it was documented. Second, I contacted a lawyer. A good one, Catherine Solis. I treated her mother in the ER once. She didn't do small talk. She did strategy. When I sat down in her office and explained everything, the photo, the messages, the crash, the betrayal, she didn't blink. "This is open and shut," she said, tapping her pen on a yellow legal pad. "But we won't just settle this. We control it. Custody, finances, reputation, we lock it down tight." I handed her a flash drive with everything I'd collected. She inserted it into her laptop and began clicking through the folders. "That's her phone?" she asked. "Pulled from the accident. She never set a password." "And your son's statement?" "Typed out and signed by the psychologist who debriefed him." She leaned back. "Good. We won't just argue poor judgment. We'll demonstrate long-term manipulation, patterned deceit, emotional neglect. You've got a compelling claim." She paused, looking up at me. "You okay to move fast?" I nodded. "Faster." She slid a packet toward me. "Emergency divorce petition. Request for full custody. Temporary no-contact order." Everything laid out in language designed to strip emotion out of the equation. I signed it all. Then came the ethics complaint, this one directly to the Department of Education. Catherine drafted it, I reviewed it. We included the photo, Tyler's testimony, the texts from Haley's phone, one of which included a message from Jake that read, "We can't keep sneaking around with him right there." It was time-stamped the same day as the motel photo. Another read, "He's not stupid. He probably suspects something. We should tell him the truth and start planning for after." After what? After the crash? After destroying my family? I didn't know. But I wasn't going to wait to find out. We submitted it. By Monday, the state board had acknowledged receipt. Haley was now under formal review for ethical violations, including substance abuse, misconduct with a minor present, and potential endangerment. The next thing I did was file for an emergency custody hearing. Catherine advised it, and I didn't hesitate. Tyler needed legal protection, not just emotional distance. I wasn't about to let him get dragged back into that mess if Haley decided to play damage control. The hearing was scheduled for Thursday. In the meantime, I moved fast, called the school, notified the counselor. I kept things simple, just enough to explain Tyler's absence without dropping details that would leak before the case moved forward. But people talk, and someone talked. On Tuesday, the story broke. I don't know who leaked it. Maybe someone in the legal office, maybe someone at the Department of Ed. But by noon, the headline was circulating in quiet corners of social media. School counselor involved in motel incident. Teen son present during crash. No names were used, not yet, but the article included enough breadcrumbs for anyone who knew us to connect the dots. By Tuesday night, Haley's school district placed her on unpaid administrative leave pending the ethics board's investigation. Jake, on the other hand, was a different story. He'd worked at a logistics firm, I knew the owner, had even helped Jake get the job years ago after one of his reinvention phases. He was good at sales, good at charming people. But when word got out about the crash and the circumstances, the company acted swiftly. I got the text from a mutual acquaintance. "Your brother's been let go." Official line is personal conduct unbecoming. Guess they didn't appreciate the headlines. I stared at the screen for a long time. Not with satisfaction exactly, but with a cold sort of closure. Jake had always slid through life with a smirk and a shrug, dodging consequences like rain. But this time, the storm caught up to him. The night before the custody hearing, Tyler and I sat together at the kitchen table. We were eating cereal at 9 p.